Hey everyone, it's Tara. Welcome to A Loop Through a Loop. Let's get into the making for July. So I think what I'm gonna do is try to go in chronological order of my making. So last time I showed you that I had started the Stephen West surprise sock knit along or mystery sock knit along. Surprise sock knit along. I can't remember precisely what it was called, and I didn't even show you what was inside my bag, but I ripped it out. The yarns that I was using just weren't quite working. So I ended up going back with my original idea for those socks and just knitting some color block vanilla socks. And then I thought I needed to kind of spice them up a little bit. They were cute on their own when they were finished, but I just wanted to add something. So I added some Russamine stitching to the side of the socks, and they're in the laundry right now and I can't find them. So I'll just insert a picture so you can see them. They are bright and colorful and summery and cheerful and loud, and they are really fun to wear, and the girls think they're really fun. The next thing that I worked on was finishing up my Lyco sweater. Lyco or Lico, I'm not 100% sure on the name, but it is a test knit that I have completed for Florence Sperling. And this is supposed to come out sometime in August, I believe around mid-August. And so I created my project with Holst Garn Coast, and all of the colors and how much yarn I used are on my Ravelry page, and my Ravelry username is always mentioned down below so that you can find me and go to my project pages and you can check it out. So I knit this to pattern. The only thing I modified and changed was the neckline, because after what I did is I steam blocked it with my iron, and the neckline was almost going off my shoulders, so it was just a little too loose, and I think it has to do with the yarn that I chose. That cotton doesn't really have much of a spring back to it, even though this is 55% wool, 45 cotton. There was enough cotton that it kind of just didn't work out. So what I did is I cut the neckline off, I picked up stitches, and I just kept knitting. It's a folded neckline. I knit, what is this? Let me hold on. Yeah, so this is 2 inches finished. So I knit 4 inches and then curled it under because I wanted something more turtleneck, I guess. But that's the only thing that I changed, and that was because of just a preference. But everything else is knit to pattern. The sleeves are about bracelet length. I did fold over the cuff on the sleeves, and then the bottom. It fits nicely. It uses the Russamine technique where it's just inlaid into the pattern. And the difference between this Russamine and the socks that I made is that I did the Russamine while I knit for this, so I had yarn hanging off of my project, whereas the Russamine that I put on my socks was actually an afterthought, so all I did was just stitch it in. It was super easy, super easy. So you could either Russamine while you're doing your knitting, or you could add it back later. It works both ways. This was really nice to knit, and I look forward to wearing it. Of course, it's just too hot to wear it now because of heat. Then I was able to go on and kind of needed a palette cleanser. So I picked up this project, or started this project and finished it. And this is, I believe it's the Agnes sweater vest. And it is composed of granny squares that you sew together. And then I picked up along the arms and along the neck and the hem and knit 1 by 1 ribbing. And that was it. It was that simple. Now, in order to get the collar to be more rounded, I did some short rows in the corners, In the pattern, she suggests doing, I believe it's some single crochets, and it's a free pattern from a blog post. And so there you go. I don't measure my gauge when it comes to crochet because I don't really crochet that often. And to be honest, I was a little afraid to pick up my crochet hook because I haven't done it in for so long. And I was really pretty good when I was younger, like a teenager. Like in college, I made scarves that were really cool patterns and stuff like that. So it's been at least a decade and a half, I think, since I last did like a crochet thing. I mean, I guess that's not true. I've done crochet here and there, but not enough to keep my confidence up. Like, I feel pretty confident if you hand me a knit pattern, I'd be like, okay, I can at least try to tackle this. And with crochet, I'm just like, it feels really overwhelming. But I knew granny squares were super easy, and I just needed to kind of get back in the groove again. My gauge with the granny squares is looser. I used an H hook, I believe, and then a 7 for the ribbing. And it does have pretty deep sides, and I debated whether putting an extra granny square on either side just to lift it up a little bit. And I can always go back and do that. I just thought, you know, this might be kind of nice to give a little bit of like breathing room since it's not like super cold here. So I don't need it to be super warm. I kind of just need it to be almost like how you would use a shawl, just a little bit of warmth. So I thought, well, if the side's left open, I mean, my arms cover it most of the time, so it's not a big deal. And I can always go back. I knit this entirely out of scraps that I had. You can see I have got my scraps in my basket here. So what I did is I held fingering weight double. So there's a lot of Holst garn in here, coast and super soft. And there are just a few hand-dyed superwash skeins in here. I washed and blocked it, laid it out flat to dry. It blocked out just fine. There was no color bleeding, which made me feel really good. Yeah, I think that's everything I have to say about it. It's a free pattern. I don't normally do this, but what I will do is I'll put the link. If you were interested in looking at this pattern, since it's free on a blog post, I will put the link to that blog post down below and you can check it out. Next up, after I finished this, I was ready to go back and look at the two whips that I had. I had the sarong sweater by Ego Knit, and then I had the melon headband by Sari Nordland. And I just, well, there's no like deep philosophical, psychological reason as to why I felt the way I did, other than to say, I just didn't want to make it. And so I just ripped them out because I wanted to make something of my own. And I just didn't feel like knitting somebody else's patterns. I decided to rip both of them out. I kind of had to just go into it without thinking too much about it, especially with my sarong sweater, because the fabric was completely cabled and there's a lot of cables and it's a slow going knit. You know, I had debated about it a while, you know, for like a day. And then I had taken it out of the project bag to look at, and I was like, oh, I don't know that I can. Like, I like this fabric and all this kind of stuff. And then when I woke up in the morning, I was like, I don't want it. So I was like, okay, so I just started going and just ripped it. And it felt so freeing. It felt so good. So what I decided to do instead was just cast on something, and I'm just going with the flow. I want it to just be really easy, and my entertainment comes from once I finish a section of the garment, then I get to decide what do I want to do next. And that's entertaining enough for me to keep going. So what I have done, and the yarn is kind of crinkly because I'm still working on everything that I frogged. So what I did is I started with the neckline and I cast on 100 stitches and I knit for a few inches, increased just a little bit, and then I decided I want some raglan shaping. And that's kind of where I am right now. So when I did the raglan shaping, my idea for this is that I will wear it what we would think of as inside out, but there is a slip stitch on the back, and so this slip stitch seam will run all the way down the entirety of the back of the garment, very much like Andrea Mowry's has in the Weekender and the other pattern that I can't remember the name of. And so since the reverse stockinette is technically the right side of the garment, I wanted to think of how can I do raglan increases that's just easy and I don't have to be concerned about what it looks like while I'm working on it technically from the wrong side. So I just decided to do yarn overs in a way that the raglan shaping, the increases are going to look like the Felix cardigan, where I just used eyelets and I did it in triplets. It's easy to remember. And then once I get done with all of the raglan increases and I split for sleeves, you know, then I can decide, how do I want to split for sleeves? How deep, how deep, first of all, how deep do I want the raglan to go? Do I want, bulkier, not bulkier, but like, do I want roomier sleeves? Like this shirt has really roomy sleeves. Do I want roomy sleeves? Do I want a tighter fitting sleeve? What do I want the body to fit like? I can kind of just decide from there. And so because I'm kind of following my own adventure, that's enough interest and entertainment while still being really simple, because I have the choice of what I want to do. The sarong sweater was just not right now, I guess. It's still very beautiful, but there was nothing about it that was keeping me in it. It was one of those where when my problem was probably that I set it down instead of keeping work on it. So if I would have stayed diligent in working on it, then I probably would have kept it. But I had set it down because I had test knits, and because I was working on my test knit, I just didn't want to pick it back up again. So there's that. Okay, and then the last, well, I guess this isn't the last. Well, I can show you something really fun. So a project that I've already had finished, but I came back to, are my little bit of love socks. And the reason that I did that is because I wanted to practice on some duplicate stitch, because I like the idea that I can go back to a garment, and if I want to add something, I can. And it doesn't have to be with intarsia. I can duplicate stitch it or use some russamine. I have these options now where I can take something that is seemingly plain or very simple and kind of like zhuzh it out. So I took, maybe I should probably just take it off. Hold on. I took my little bit of love socks that are designed by Emily Clausen of Salt City Knits, and the yarn is from Candy Shop Yarns, which is dyed by Deborah, her sister, and it's a kit that she had for the pattern, so they go together. And I just decided to add some monogram on it, so I put, the logo for Barbie and also for Ken. What I did is I used Stitch Fiddle. I charted out the letter. So I pulled up one window on my computer was the Barbie logo or the Ken logo, the font, or you could put Barbie font, and looked up those letters. and then had Stitch Fiddle open in another window and used the image of the logo to chart, you know, what kind of stitches I needed to make where. And then I just followed the chart like I would with any other kind of color work. The socks are kind of in rough, I shouldn't say in rough shape. They're in loved shape. All of my knit socks look loved. Okay, they're not pristine and perfect. They're worn and loved. Safe to say, I have been converted to really enjoying sock knitting. And I think that's because I have found the kinds of socks that I want to make. So then I was working on my sweater over here, and I decided I wanted to start a pair of socks, and I had an idea. I charted it all out. I ordered some yarn from Deborah again, this time in the color Alabaster. In the color Cream Soda. And I titled these my Alabaster socks, like Mary from the Bible when she took her jar of alabaster and poured the oil on Jesus and poured it on his feet like she was crying. So I have some texture here to me that's like tears. And then she wiped his feet with her hair. So I have a braid going down. So this is like my Alabaster socks. So this is the back. The braid is in the back. I'm on the heel flap. And then this is the front. So I think they're turning out nicely. I really enjoy them. I don't know if this is a pattern that I would like write up and then release, but maybe, I don't know. Sometimes when I do work like this, I'm just like, but what if that's like too fussy? What if it's too much and somebody doesn't want to make it? But at the same time, but what if they do? And I've already done the math to make it work. Now, the only thing is that this is a 64 stitch sock. And the way that the design works, like because it's essentially a ribbed sock, 2x2 ribbing sock. The only change in that is in the back with the braid, but it all goes from 2x2 ribbing. And then I've designed it in a way that between these two columns here are 2 columns of ribbing, and it works out mathematically, symmetrically all the way around. Well, if you wear a 60 stitch sock, I mean, I guess you could cast on 60 stitches at the top and then add 4 stitches, but I've worked it in a way that everything just kind of flows. So then I'm like, I don't really know that that's gonna work. Because I would have to take out like a whole section. I would have to take out 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 stitches, and then you're left with a 54 stitch sock. And that would be like for a child. I don't know, because this isn't really something that could be adapted to different sizes if you cast on a different amount. Like it just mathematically has to be 64 stitches. Does that make sense? I think I'm thinking too much about it. Right now I just need to enjoy knitting the socks. So what'll happen is I'll finish the heel flap and gusset as usual. The columns in the front will continue all the way down the front of the foot, and then like on the back it'll just be a 2x2 plain ribbing, just so that it fits the foot really nicely. But I'm really enjoying these. I'm really liking them. I'm very pleased with how it turned out, because when I was working, because I charted it all, I took the idea in my head and I just charted it all. And sometimes when you chart it, you don't really know how well you're gonna like it until you actually knit it. That's happened to me a few times where I've charted something and I liked the chart, and then I went to go knit it and it did not work. Hopefully these will be done soon. I would call this halfway through sock 1. And once I started getting going, it really was pretty easy. So I have enjoyed it. That's everything that I made for the month of July. we're getting ready to go into August, so that's busy with the start of school and dance classes and preschool and all this other stuff going on. So hopefully all that means is that I have a lot of hurry up and wait time, which means more knitting time. So I will catch you in August. Thank you for coming and spending time with me. I appreciate you being here. I'll catch you next time. Bye.